Good evening and happy anniversary to the Big I. We have so much to be proud of and celebrate this year. Our achievements are many and our history is rich. But we have thrived for 125 years, mostly because of our great people, leaders and innovators who have steered us through good times and bad. That's why it's truly an honor for me to introduce the Big I Legends video. You are about to hear from some important people, the past chairs of the National Association and winners of our prestigious Woodworth and Yates Awards. They make up a long line of those who have committed their all to the Big I. Their dedication to this association and the work they have done to protect and promote their profession and the independent agency system is enduring and inspiring. For many years, I have witnessed the sacrifices they've made to strengthen the IA system in our industry, and I'm fortunate because I can call all of them great friends as well.
I couldn't agree more with Bob. I'm so honored to be a part of this great association, and I consider it a tremendous privilege to have served as your chairman. I am humbled by having been chair during this important year in our history, and to stand alongside the truly great people who have preceded me and worked diligently to build a solid and long-lasting foundation for our association and its members. A simple thank you doesn't seem sufficient to our great predecessors, but on behalf of your current leadership and staff, I do want to thank all of you who came before us, who taught and guided us, and devoted your time and energy to our terrific members. Now, let's hear a little living history from our legends.
The Big I has been so very important to agents over its history because the Big I has agents' backs. It is the organization and the advocacy group that really makes sure that independent agents are promoted, that their businesses are protected, that they are educated and able to serve the consumer. And when it all comes down to it, what makes independent agents so special is their relationship with their customers.
If you have customers on one side of the room, potential customers, and companies on the other side of the room, you gotta have somebody to bring them all together. And the person that brings them all together is a knowledgeable insurance agent. And any way you look at it, that's never changed. It was the same way in 1957 or so when I was getting started as it is today.
The legacy of the Big I is virtually making it 125 years, dragging along a bunch of entrepreneurial people from all over the country that are trying to do good things for their clients and being able to offer services and help to those agents that allows them to take care of their clients in a way that's special. And I think that Big I's been great at it.
An independent agent without the Big I, you're either going to be reactive, just totally putting out fires every day, reacting to this situation, reacting to this legislation, reacting to some policy that's dictated, or you can be strategic and be a member of an association that is, strength in numbers, one voice, one message.
In the year 1904, the Independent Insurance Agents of America got a very, very marked lawsuit accomplished that helped all insurance agents, and it was called Yonkers versus New York. And in the Yonkers decision, it was clarified that the independent insurance agent owns the renewals. And with that very simple thing, the Big I gave us the right to own our business and sell it in the future and command what happens to it.
The Big I brought that lawsuit, established the ownership of expirations, but we didn't stop there. We created an agency contracts committee, which then negotiated with carriers to incorporate contractual improvements in the agency agreements that agents have today. But the indemnification that agents have today, better notice on change of commissions, better notice before termination, those kind of things, all are the result of the efforts of the Big I.
The independent agent channel without the Big I, frankly, would be extremely disorganized and look so much different than it does today. And we wouldn't be near as effective as we are collectively. Politically, we would have no voice on a national level, and our story as an independent agent and what we're doing in our communities would be lost or misunderstood. And we'd have no leverage to protect ourselves, our members, and our client.
Without the Big I, we would literally have no representation in Washington, and our business wouldn't be what our business is today. I mean, we'd likely be regulated by a federal regulator. We'd be subject to whatever the federal guidelines of the day are in Washington. Just ask the national banks what it's like being regulated out of Washington, D.C.
As a legislative advocate, they advocate for us where there's bad legislation. What comes to mind, they work for the National Flood Program, crop insurance program, financial services type legislation. Without them, I think that our expenses would be much higher. I think there'd be a lot more red tape and restrictions on independent agents if the Big I wasn't there.
Nobody does it like the Big I because we go back and we hang it on that grassroots effort of which we can go back through our state associations. That becomes very, very important when the rubber hits the road and we have to make a decision as to where we stand on an issue and what we're going to do for our consumer.
When you get involved in an association, you understand how critical politics is to what we do, whether it's on the local level or the national level. And I think our association, the staff, did a great job impressing me early on about how important being involved with politicians were. I mean, my congressman for several years was a gentleman named Thomas P. Tip O'Neill. He was interesting, and Tip was a great guy to get to know, and I got to know him because of insurance.
I think the role that the Big I plays in the industry is really important from one key factor. I served on the Technical Affairs Committee for 2 or 3 years, and the impact that we had on making change with coverage forms, and we'd go to visit ISO, talking to them about emerging issues in insurance and making changes on existing coverages. The influence we had, I think, in the insurance industry was just very important and very meaningful to insurance agents and the insurance client public too.
The companies, before they would do this or that in terms of policy language or contracts, etc., they would run it by the Big I. Now, the Big I was, I wouldn't say a policeman, but the Big I was watched over our contracts. And when some road company decided they wanted to do something that was really not in the interest of our industry nor of our members, the Big I stepped in and really, I think if there's one thing that they did over the years, the monitoring of the contracts, they helped us there as much as anyone could have, and there wasn't anyone else to do it.
Of course, the relationship that agents have with their customers and the fact that we deal with a nebulous product that people can't take home and put on the mantle or feel warm and fuzzy about, that's going to probably principally play the perpetuation of our system of doing business. At the end of the day, we're not a commodity. It's a promise, and you can't put your arms around it and feel good about it. You need somebody to stand there and be that promise to you.
Big I agents are involved all over, men and women in every phase of community life, boards and commissions and hospitals and governorships and senators. Whatever there is to do, an independent agent likes to be involved in it. It's their sense of community. It's the basis for their business. There's no question about that. But in fact, that's the type of thing that our agents want to do.
I think the way the big I truly leads is through anticipating the future and what agents will face, and then implementing programs that will carry the success of the agencies. I know when we first did in my administration strategic planning and came up with the policies for ACT, Agents Council for Technology, and for InsureVag, and for branding, all of these things came out of anticipating agents' need in the future.
I think my favorite memory would have to be the day that we cut the ribbon to open InsureBank, which would have been in May of, I believe, 2001. It was a long time coming. We had to find someone who would be willing to capitalize the bank. That turned out to be Mr. William Berkeley and the W.R. Berkeley Company, who have been great partners. But as with all things like that, it took some time. And then we had to have federal regulators grant us a national charter. And as you might imagine, regulators were not particularly enthralled with the idea of insurance salesmen going into the banking business. So it took us a little bit of time to get all that done.
The Best Practices Committee was formed, and I chaired it for probably the first 3 or 4 years. And we got it off the ground, and I will tell you that I do get a kick out of the fact that here we are 30 years later plus, and it's still got shelf life. There's an evaluation that's done of agencies who is to determine whether they are following best practices. The reason why I think it's had legs is the whole world of continuous improvement, and it's all about process.
You know, when we developed the brand Trusted Choice, we wanted to give the agents the latitude to continue to promote and brand their own agency, but tie to this master agency, if you would, Trusted Choice, that would unify us in terms of the expected performance of an agent and what a client can expect for the behavior of that agent. At the same time, we could continue advertising our own hometown agencies, and it was a very wise move in our part.
Our Young Agents program, which has been going on for way longer than I've been around, is the real key to developing young leaders who become older leaders and ultimately lead this association. To have something that's basically the same in each of the states and is replicated over and over and over, it just breeds success.
I joined the Big I in 1999, and it was with the purpose of building the virtual university. And I saw the power that was available on the internet to provide just-in-time and instant information. Nothing was more evident of that than right after 9/11. I and many of our volunteer faculty were up overnight, and I think our first article about the insurance implications was published at 3 a.m. the day after 9/11 occurred. It was the right time to start a resource like that, and it's continued since I've left successfully.
So I think the Big I has innovated the industry in lots of ways, but probably nothing more impactful than TrustedChoice.com. Conceptualizing, building, sustaining TrustedChoice.com was a game-changing innovation. And because before TrustedChoice.com, independent agents didn't have the ability to have a true recognizable profile and brand in the digital world. And in turn, TrustedChoice.com became the father of a cultural shift of undaunted and relentless digital innovation for independent agents that continues today.
Companies are now starting to look at us as leaders when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And quite frankly, we have to continue to evolve, and that's part of the future. We're starting to really turn the corner and realize what a value diversity and inclusion is to our, not only our association, but for us as individuals in business. It's becoming more and more an important part of what we do year in and year out.
One of the areas that I continually heard on my travels to different states
from Trusted Choice Independent Agents was how difficult it was to find talent. I think one of our great innovations was in Big I hires. We brought it to our members in record time. I think that the response to having the tools available to Trusted Choice Independent Agents inside of Big I hires is second to none and has been well received.
To me, being a independent insurance agent is something that was unavoidable for me. You can see behind me the two pictures of my grandfather on the right, who was on the executive board, and my father on the other side. I used to be taken out when I was 10, 11 years old, thrown in the backseat of a car when they'd go out to a loss. What they used to be able to do is give the client a check right on the spot. So I thought growing up, boy, how great is this? You go out, you see people, you give them money, and they give you a hug and a kiss. Unfortunately, I learned much later after college and started to work as an independent agent that you actually had to sell.
My favorite association memory involves Tom Ahart, who preceded me on the executive committee by a few years. And Tom and I were known to disagree on a lot of things, maybe even most things. And so some people thought we really didn't like each other. So Tom and I concocted a practical joke to play on the executive committee. I was chairing the executive committee when Tom came in to testify on behalf of Trusted Choice. And we started kind of a not so friendly banter across the room to each other. And then it really turned angry.
So then I go into it and say, I can't believe you're talking to me like this. You've screwed up this whole thing from day one. I would have had it done. And so then he goes on and says some other things. And then I slam my fist down and say, I've had enough. I'm not taking any more from you. And with that, we both stand up. We both go around to the end of the table and grab each other's shirts. And we pull our fists back to hit each other.
It's my very first executive committee. I'd just been elected to the executive committee, and I'm thinking to myself, is this what happens every time? People scream and yell at each other? They're going to get in fist fights every time?
And we charged at each other with fists ready, and then we hugged it out and joined each other in a big hug and looked at the executive committee, and they were all slack-jawed. They could not believe what they just saw. We deserved Oscars for that presentation.
Oh, sure. It had to be I think it was the greatest joke on the executive committee ever.
President Clinton was in the White House, and health insurance was a big issue even back then, but he was really concerned about portability, and he really worked hard at trying to get that accomplished. We got invited to the White House. George Fraser was a dear friend of Bill Clinton's. He helped arrange it. It was a wonderful time, something that really helped people to see our association as, yes, we can walk either side of the aisle. I think that's the story for independent agents, period. And we do have a voice that will stand up for each and every one of us.
I had the opportunity to shake hands with 3 presidents and several members of Congress. So that all of those things really were the important thing to me during that time. And the last thing, and not the least, was the close personal friendship that I had with Raymond Burr. He was a very, very active person with the association. The national convention, he came every year. When he was coming through Utah, he would call me and say, I'm going to change planes in Utah so we can get together and have dinner. My family knew him, and it was a special time.
So the big I for me, it's much broader than just the association. I can give you all the pat answers about advocacy. I can give you all the pat answers about, access to E&O. Frankly, for me, it is the camaraderie that I have gained And having an outlet and having a venue where you can sit down with your peers, not in the context of being adversaries, they're competing against each other, but in the context of being able to share and commiserate and talk through a lot of different things that go on in the industry. And the ability to have an association that serves as that vehicle, I think, is vitally important.
It's certainly ingrained in almost all agents. They're the leaders in their communities. They're the leaders in nonprofit organizations. They're leaders in charitable organizations. And of course, they care about each other too, surprisingly, even though we compete on a usually daily basis. There's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of feeling for each other.
It taught me that not all agencies, all people were the same. The reason I say it helped make me a better agent is because there were a lot of things I knew or I learned that I thought I knew, but that I really didn't. In agency management, handling clients, dealing with companies, dealing with underwriters. And when you meet people from all over the country that doing the same thing you're doing, day in and day out, you can really pick up some good ideas and learn from people.
What it was like being the first woman at the time, honestly, I was so busy going through the chairs and doing so much traveling and still trying to actively sell insurance at the same time that I don't think at the time I fully appreciated what a milestone it was. And it's only now looking back that I realized that it was a milestone for the association. And it is a long, steady climb, if you will, through the chairs. Along the way, you meet some amazing people. It was a great experience. I met people I would never have had the opportunity to meet. I really enjoyed that.
For me to look back and say, hey, what does this 125 years mean? This has been a great association. And for those of the people that are not members of it, they truly ought to consider being here, because this is where the heart, this is really where the heart beats, and you're going to need some help someday. And I believe that this is the place you're going to get it.
I don't know what's going to happen out there in the future. I do know that things will change, the needs will change, the activities and services will need to change. But as long as we keep an eye as an association on the consumers who are using our products, that we will, by keeping that focus, we will arrive at the right decisions going forward, I'm sure, because we always have.
The legacy of the Big I up to this point has been about shaping the independent agent and the independent agency system. I think the real big question is, what's the legacy going forward, and can we continue that? The world is ever changing, as are small businesses, as is technology, as is the needs of an independent agent. And we have to continually challenge ourselves and press ourselves to look for how we bring value to our members and to the system. And so I'm not sure the legacy is completely written yet. Up to this point, we have one heck of a legacy, but we can't stop here. We have to continue to transform to bring value to the next generation.